Hello, my name is Alma.
Petra Beck, Whitney Crabtree,
Simran.
And we are Team 3, and we are students of the International Business course here at the University of Texas at Tyler, and we're here to talk to you about Japan.
Hi, I'm Petra, and today I'm going to talk about some background information about Japan. Japan is located in the Pacific Ocean and is a compilation of 4 major islands, the Hokkaidō, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. It has a population of approximately 127.3 million people, which is about a third of the population of the United States. Japan is also 145,936 square miles, while the United States is only 3.79 million square miles. The currency is the Japanese yen, and in the upper right corner, as you can see, is the Prime Minister of Japan, who is named Shinzo Abe, who is the head of their government.
Hi, I'm Simran, and the first part of our presentation is going to go over a political analysis of Japan in comparison to the United States. A few of the key differences named in the table are that Japan has a prime minister as the head of their government. He can serve for less than 4 years if he would like to, and he can serve as many terms as he would like to as well. Whereas in the US, we have a president and a 2-term max. The second part of our political analysis is over rule of law, which is how much a country follows the rules and regulations, or if the personal relations play more of a role. As you can see in the last 5 years in Japan, they have been steadily inclining towards a government which follows rules and regulations very carefully, though in the last year they have started to show some decline. In political freedom, we see Japan has historically had a higher degree of political freedom than the United States, though in the past few years they have shown somewhat of a sharp decline. This may be in part to some of the issues they've recently had with the social structure there.
In regards to political instability, Japan historically has had a higher rate than the United States. This scale goes by 0 as being not stable at all, and 1 being the most stable. So, by these standards, Japan ranks as being very politically stable.
The annual GDP growth for Japan tremendously decreased in 2011, and then the annual GDP growth for the U.S. had just a slight decrease in 2013. The key points for the exchange rates for the U.S. and Japan would be that Japan continuously decreased throughout the years, while the U.S. stayed the same throughout the years. This graph shows the GNI per capita for the U.S. and for Japan from the years 2010 to 2015. It shows that Japan slightly increased from 2010 at 35,000 to 2015 at 39,000. Then the U.S. shows that it increased in 2010 from 49,000 to 2015 at 56,000. The economic freedom for Japan from the years 2010 to 2015 was slightly increasing each year, while the U.S. was slightly decreasing each year. From 1980 to 2013, the HDI for Japan and the U.S. shows that they both increased, but Japan was a little bit less than the U.S.
Ethnicity-wise, the United States is much more diverse than Japan. In Japan, people who are either Korean, Chinese, or other count for less than 1% of the population each. So these are Hofstede's variables, and while they are all very important indicators and concern to culture, due to time constraints, I will only be speaking on the most significant differences. Masculinity shows that the U.S. displays more traditionally masculine traits than Japan. Uncertainty avoidance shows that in the Japanese culture, they tend to avoid uncertainty much more than they would in the United States. And long-term orientation shows that Japan is much more long-term oriented than the United States. Trumpinars is another great indicator for culture, and the very big differences we can see are in neutral versus effective, where people from Japan are more calm and collected, whereas in the United States, emotion is more freely shown. And then once again, in achieved versus ascribed, which shows that Japan has a heavy emphasis on social class and how they perceive others because of it in comparison to the United States. So when it comes to religion, obviously the USA has more diversity. The graph is in percents of people who identify as each religion. And the reason the total exceeds over 100% in Japan for Buddhism and Shintoism is because people often identify as both simultaneously. This PISA graph in education is primarily based on how many people have completed secondary education. And as you can see, Japan has a much higher rate of people who complete secondary education, and they place a heavier emphasis on education in their culture.
These two graphs show a difference between Japan and the United States urban to rural population. As you can tell, Japan does have a great urban population, as so does the United States, but the United States has more of a rural population than Japan. For Japan's technology, we will look at the patent application per residence. In 2010 to 2012, the United States did have a lower application process, but started to see an increase from 2013 to 2014, which was higher than Japan. As you can see, Japan had a steady from 2010 to 2012. This was probably because Japan is more technologically advanced than the United States, but the United States is now trying to catch up. Another part of Japan's technology is their research and development. Compared to the United States, Japan has done more than the United States has over the past 4 years.
So looking at the environmental portion of our country, which is Japan, a small island in the Pacific Ocean, size-wise can be compared to the size of California, although California is still bigger than Japan. And now looking at the threatened plant species, which is the other considerable difference between the two countries, we see that Japan has a considerable higher number than the U.S. The U.S. does have a few endangered plants, to mention a few: the Georgia aster, the Rafflesia flower, western prairie fringed orchid. On the other hand, Japan is currently compromising about 7,000 species of vascular plants, and this is the highest that the country has seen it, as some of these species begin to disappear altogether or become endangered at one point in time. We're looking at the EPI numbers here, and the biggest difference that we're going to find between Japan and the U.S. Is going to be in population density per square kilometer and the threatened plant species, both of which are very different numbers for the two countries. Looking at the population density, California has a population of around 38.8 million, and Japan has a population of around 127 million, which is extremely crowded. And looking at how this population is divided, most of the land in Japan is actually not suitable for residential use. And actually, Japan is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. It does have 10% of the world's active volcanoes, which cause a lot of small earthquakes for the country as well.
The Japanese legal system is based on the civil law system, following the model of European legal systems, especially those of Germany and France. Japan established its legal system when imperial rule to Japan was destroyed in 1868, which became the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Constitution was the organic law of the Japanese Empire in effect from 1890 to 1945. After Japan's defeat in World War II, there was a major legal reform, and the Constitution was drawn up under the Allied occupation with U.S. influence. The current Japanese legal system is a hybrid of the continental and American law. Japan SWOT analysis. Their strengths are Japan has the third largest national economy after the United States. They're known for the automobile industry and their advancement of technology. Their weaknesses are shipment of Japan's textile industry have decreased to about 1/3 of those at peak. After the Lehman shock in particular, the production level decreased sharply, prices are becoming lower. In the global cost reduction competition, production of general-purpose materials by China is increasing. Most apparel products are imported, few products are exported. The opportunities are expanding on existing textile market, particularly in Europe and the Americas, strengthening their existing relationship with other Asian countries, and they can grow rapidly if they mobilize through their highly efficient labor market. Their threats: declining population projected to drop from 127 million people to 117 million in 2030 and below 90 million people in 2057. Japan is in a major earthquake zone. They're vulnerable. They have a vulnerable economy. They have been battling with deflation for many years. There are ongoing debt crisis, and Japan does not use the English language very much, which makes it very difficult to communicate with global societies.